Hey FCF, we are continuing our journey in principles and processes, and we're in the book of Philippians. We've just been kind of working our way through, and just a little bit of a review. Both Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and the book of Philemon, they were all written around the same time frame, around 61 to 62 AD. The Apostle Paul, if you read in Acts chapter 28, verse 16, and then the last two verses, verse 30 and 31 of Acts 28, he is in Rome, and he's in house arrest. It's really an unusual situation. He's literally chained to a Roman guards periodically around the clock, but he's got his own house, and people are allowed to come there, and he can discuss the kingdom of God with them. So again, reference Acts 28, verse 16, and then 30 and 31. So he's been a follower of Christ now for about 27 years. He will follow Christ another approximate 5 years before he's finally martyred in 67 AD. But as he's in this incarceration situation, he's writing these powerful letters. So the Spirit of God is utilizing the time that could have been discouraging, that might have felt unnecessarily restrictive, but in reality, it was giving Paul the opportunity to probably focus on some things, Spirit of God to get his attention, so that now for time and all through human history, we've had these valuable books, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon. Okay. Well, let's start right in Philippians, and we're not covering every single verse, but we're going to start in chapter 1, verse 12. Paul speaking, he says, "Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. As a result," verse 13, "it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. And because of my chains," verse 14, "most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear." Well, here Paul is writing to these followers of Christ living in Philippi. He's in Rome, and his main concern doesn't appear to be so much for his own situation. We'll find out later it was pretty precarious. He acknowledges that he didn't know if he would be released or executed. But anyway, his concern clearly is that he doesn't want the Philippians to be discouraged. He doesn't want them to panic. He's saying, hey, what happened to me? So he's acknowledging he didn't choose this. He didn't want this arrest. He said, but what happened to me, it's actually advancing the gospel, the message of Christ. He's saying now the Praetorian Guard, the royal guard of Caesar's household, they're hearing the message of Christ. And we know that it makes its way all through Rome. Within 300 years, Rome becomes a Christian empire because of this start. At any rate, Paul's concern is not so much for his circumstances. He sees this as a missional stop. One of the things that's key in these passages we'll look at, and in Paul's life, he knew that there was an uncertain element to life. He knew he was in a spiritual warfare. He talks about Satan attacking him in various ways. He understands that, but he also talks about how the Lord had rescued him, and he was confident the Lord will rescue him again and continue to rescue him. This is in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 7 through 11. So Paul sees this imprisonment as being used by God strategically to get the message of Christ into the emperor's palace, so to speak, through the guards that were guarding him. So he wants the Philippians not to be discouraged. Oh, wow, our leader's been arrested. He's saying, no, this is actually good news. And he says it's good news on a couple fronts. Not only are these Roman guards hearing the message, he says, but the brothers and sisters are gaining more confidence to proclaim the message of Christ. And so he's saying, in essence, that when they saw that, let's say, the powers of evil were trying to silence the gospel, well, they made their minds up, well, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to proclaim the message of Christ more and more, not less and less. Now, think about that. When Satan attacks Christians, his goal is to silence us and to nullify us, to scare us into pulling back, becoming intimidated, and silencing us. Instead, these believers were being motivated to be bolder and bolder and to share Christ more and more instead of allowing themselves to be intimidated. Let me share that part with you again. He says, as a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else, I'm in chains for Christ. I'm on mission, he's saying. Verse 14, and because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. So this tactic of arresting the leader was meant to scare the Christians and to silence them, but instead the Spirit of God was emboldening them and giving them courage. So maybe we walk away today with the thought that God is always one to want to give us more confidence and boldness to share the message of Christ. I think fearfully we often allow ourselves to be silenced way too easily. And Satan, of course, knows this and knows the danger, that the power of this message about Christ, once it gets into a person's mind and heart, it can change their life for time and eternity. All right, we'll close that today, and we'll pick it up in Philippians again tomorrow.